Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. So welcome to the show there, Jimmy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now, do most people call you Jimmy, or do they call you Jim, or?
Well, here's the thing. My family growing up when I was little would call me Jimmy. Going into school, they called me Jim.
Mm-hmm.
As of the start of social media, when I started jimmypopart, which is my, I would say, brand name, everybody started calling me Jimmy again. So I got friends that would always call me Jim my whole life, and all of a sudden everybody's calling me Jimmy. So that's that. But you can call me Jim, call me Jimmy, do whatever you'd like.
All right, I might go with Jim. That's a little shorter.
That's cool. I'd rather have that.
That's awesome. It's funny. My one of my foster fathers had a son, and his name is James, and James Robert.
Mm-hmm.
And his sister, because my foster aunt got very upset because she had a son, ultimately named him Dusty, at the same time. And she got so upset with my dad that because she said, "You knew I wanted to name my son Jim Bob." And it was, she lived the life of a farmer, and she became a farmer's wife, and she still is a farmer.
Right.
My dad's an executive, so it's just kind of funny how she's like, "I wanted to name my kid Jim Bob." So
that's funny.
So Jim, what are you currently doing in your studio?
Well, right now I'm working on a couple things. Actually, I got another commission just yesterday.
Nice.
Or actually the other day. I have a friend of mine that lives out in towards the north from here, from where I live, up in what's it called? Alcatraz. I can't remember the name. But anyways, he's got mountain plains out there. So he sent me a picture of some of the mountain plains that he's got a view of, and he wants me to paint that for him. Nice. But I'm actually working on a couple of portraits right now. But other than that, that's about it.
That's cool, man. That's cool. And I was noticing, actually I noticed you because we were looking through Facebook, my son and I, and we came across your work.
Right.
And my son's like, "Oh my gosh, he does like sports art. That's so cool." Right. So like, what's the deal with the sports and the art, and what's up with that?
Well, let me tell you this. I also have been a football coach. Coached Pop Warner football as my son was growing up. I coached high school football, and so football is in my blood.
Nice.
And sports is in my blood. And I've always and there's some kids that have played that recently have played in the NFL that I've coached and we're very, very good friends with. So there's a couple of them there, Steve Smith from the New York Giants and Malcolm Smith they're both brothers from the Seattle Seahawks. They both grew up with our family, and I was really good friends with my son, and still is. So I had asked him when I started painting if I could paint a portrait of him, and he said sure. And so I started from there. I started painting just other NFL players, and just wanted to see how that would work out, and I just love it. There's a guy that played in the 70s at USC, was one of their most famous football players, Anthony Davis, played here in the valley where we're from. I painted him, and he ended up wanting to put my painting in his book that he wrote.
Oh, wow.
But the publishing was pretty much already done, so they couldn't get it in there. But that was kind of a treat, you know. That was kind of so. I love painting football players. So
that's cool. And
yeah.
and is that something that you do for them, or do they come and actually hire you now to like paint them? Like, how's that relationship?
In the beginning, it was for them, obviously Steve and Malcolm. I did that for them, being friends, and now they'll come and my name gets out there, so they will come and ask, and I've done a few of them, but
That's awesome.
I'd like to do a lot more.
That's very, very cool. And then
yeah.
like so how did you get started in the arts? Like what's that story that kind of attracted you into it?
Well, I've got kind of an interesting story, and I don't want to make it sound as if I'm in this because I have to be, but I grew up kind of doodling around, not much. I remember when I was young, very, very young, I would always go to my grandma's house, and she had a pen portrait, just a small regular piece of paper. She put it in a frame, maybe a 5x7, a pen portrait of my aunt that she painted. And I thought, boy, that is cool. I remember that. And I remember going to her house when I was young, and I would walk in the house and she would say, here, she'd give me a pen and some butcher paper, and she'd put it on the floor. She'd say, draw. That was it. And I thought, well, draw? I don't know how to draw. But I mean, being a kid, I said, great. So I would do that. But make a long story short, it was about, I think almost 5 years ago. And I've never painted before. And I just used to doodle. Now, nothing spectacular, nothing great. And I was working at, I do landscape and masonry work. Well, I did. And I was working at a lady's house, and I was coming every day, and she was taking art lessons. And one day she asked me if I'd like to look at her work, and I said, sure. So I went in there and I looked at her work, and she had been painting for about 4 years. I mean, 4 months rather. And I thought, well, yeah, I was being nice and kind. And I said, no, very nice. And the next day she comes out and she says, Jim, you could paint. And I said, paint? No, I can't paint. I said, you mean houses? And she said, no, paintings, oil paintings, portraits, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, I can't. And she says, yes, you can. For 2 months, we worked at her house, and every day she came out and said, Jim, are you painting yet? Are you going to paint? Are you painting? To the point where I really was getting kind of bothered by it. Anyways, she came out the next day, and she says, are you going to paint? I said, Mary, can I ask you just a simple favor? I said, can you please stop asking me if I can paint, because I don't want to paint. I don't know how to paint. I don't have time to paint. And she went, oh. And I said, no, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. She goes, oh, no. And she goes, that's it? Just don't ask anymore? And I said, yes, if you just please stop asking me. And she said, okay, I'll never ask you again. I said, that's it? She goes, that's it. I said, oh, okay. That was it. The next day I came, and I thought, okay, good. She'll stop asking, because it was really, really getting on my nerves, kind of. I came out, and she says, good morning, Jim. I said, good morning. And she says, I've got something for you. And I said, oh, okay. She comes out. She pulls behind her back a brand new canvas. She goes, here, this is for you. And I said, Mary, I thought we talked about this. I don't know. No. She goes, I thought I asked you not to ask me again. She says, oh, I'm not asking you. I'm telling you.
Exactly.
I'm going, what? She's going, paint one thing, and I promise you it's going to change your life. I go, Mary, no, I don't know. She goes, I promise, paint one thing. I'll never bother you again. So, so finally I just said, fine, I'll do it. And so she grabbed me, she pulled by my arm, and my guys are working. She took me to Michael's. We bought all this stuff, and I'm going, I don't even know why I'm doing this. I came home, And my wife goes, "What is this?" And I said, please, just don't ask." And then she told me, "Paint something, and I'm going to prove to you you can paint." And I said, "I don't know how." So she kind of told me how to do it, what to do. And if you notice in some of the pictures I have there, I have my grandson in a USC helmet when he was about 2 years old. I said, "I'm going to paint that. I'm going to prove to her that I cannot do this." Well, I started doing it, Don. I started doing exactly what she told me. And to my surprise, I did his little eyes, just like somebody that didn't know what they're doing, just a little eye and a little nose. Of course, I drew it out 1st. And then I drew his little lips, and all of a sudden I looked at it and I went, "Oh my God." I took it into my wife and I showed her. I said, "Beth," I said, "who is this?" And she said, "Oh, that's Justin. How'd you do that?" I said, "I have no idea. I don't know." And I couldn't wait the next day to get home to paint. It took me about a month and a lot of frustration and a lot of this, and I finally finished it. And to this day, she was right. Changed my life.
That's beautiful.
I could not stop painting. True story. But I've always wanted to paint. My best friend's mom was kind of like the same thing. She just all of a sudden started painting, and I would go in the room. I go, "Oh my, how can they do it?" So there's certain people and certain times in my life that I know that it ingrained in me that I like that. You know, kind of a defining moment somewhat. But that's how I got started, Don, and I've been painting ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And about how many years has that been?
It's been I painted. I started painting November of 2011, so it's been 5 or 6 years now.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's very, very cool. That's very cool. And now, are you still building walls and doing mason work, or are you doing painting full time, or?
No, I'm not painting full time. I would say I'm doing part time of both.
Okay.
Because of my health, I can't do the masonry thing, but I'm still doing that here and there. But mostly painting. I would say probably 60-40, something like that. I'd like to do it 100%, but bills come and go.
Well, I'm going to ask you a crazy question. I'm going to take this conversation in a different direction, because logically I should go deeper into your painting, but I actually want to go a little deeper into your masonry work, if you don't mind. There's a reason for it, but I kind of would like to. How long have you been doing masonry work?
Oh, most of my life. Yeah. Oh, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 years.
Wow, that's cool. And how did you get into that?
I used to work for the masonry union. My uncle was a foreman there, and I got into got in the union, building all the malls around town. But because of my accident, I had to stop.
And then we'll get into that in a second. But when you were doing the mason work, did you get into the design work of it, or were you just assembling?
Actually the design work. Most of the design work I could design, and I think that's why that one lady saw something, because she did mention to me, "Look what you did in my backyard. You could paint." So,
and that's actually the reason.
I have a pretty good eye.
What was that?
Go ahead. I said I think I have a pretty good eye.
Yeah, and I think that's why I agree with you 100% that she became so adamant, because what she was seeing in her backyard, what you were doing in 3 dimensions, and then probably the feedback that you were giving her on her artwork, and then she probably realize like, whoa, this is a way of thinking and seeing, and you're able to translate it through stone, but you're also to communicate it, through that painting. Even though you didn't have that experience, you had the aptitude for it, and so it makes sense that she jumped on that. And so, yeah,
right.
It's interesting. As a mason, I'm going to call you a mason, builder, whatever. What would be, when you translate that into painting, what's one or two mindsets that that you pulled over into your painting?
I probably think the construction of what you're doing, because in paintings, you're building at the same time, just as you are in building anything else. You're building values, you're building tones, you're building a base, you're building layers of paint. There's so much to it, and there's always, you go in a certain direction with a certain way that you want to do it, and you say, well, no, let's change this, and that's how same with painting. Well, thinking that you're going to paint this, but yet something else happens, and you're painting something, you're doing something else, or going in a little bit of a direction. It's almost like it's an open canvas. It's probably the easiest way to say it. Both are open canvas. You got an open yard of nothing. You got a brand new canvas of just a plain canvas. So just a building, that building thought, I think, is pretty much the same.
That's cool. And when you're doing the masonry work, is there before you're building, assembling this project, is there a lot of prep work that goes into it?
Oh yeah, of course. Everything you do, there's a lot of prep work. Everything you, kind of like in painting too. You're doing prep work. You're getting set up. You're setting up. You're setting a foundation. Same with everything else you do.
That's cool. Building. Very, very cool. Very cool. So you said that that there was an accident. Are you okay with sharing what that was?
Oh, I was 19 years old, and I got in a head-on collision. I used to own an old VW bus that guy made a left-hand turn where I thought he was going straight right in front of me when I went into the intersection, and he, obviously in a VW bus, there's nothing in front of you, so when he hit me, I'm pretty much hanging out the front window, and just really dislocated my hip and shattered my kneecap and broke my ankle, blah 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 blah. So a lot. It took me about 2 years to get back to learn how to walk. But
wow.
I've had 5 surgeries since that accident. So when I say I'm working, I'm not literally working. Guys that we will do a small tiny little thing, so the guys will do it, but that it's nothing spectacular, trust me.
I get that. So Jim, when you're looking at your work and you're do you want to spend most of your time, you said you did landscapes, correct? Okay. Do you do mostly landscapes, or do you do mostly the sports work, or about the same?
Oh, in the paintings, I would probably say I do mostly portraits, mostly
very cool.
Sports, and so because I get commissions, I'll get commissions. It's interesting. I've gotten commissions for painting pets, dogs, which is interesting. And I mean, to me, it's all the same. You're painting a portrait of a human, or you're painting a portrait of a dog. One has more hair than the other. but yeah, I think I do. I do probably just sports and portraits is probably the most. I'll do a landscape. I would do landscapes if I was asked to do. Although I like it, but I think I'm more towards the portraits and sports.
That's cool. In about 5 years, 10 years down the road, where do you see Jim and his artwork being?
Well, I'm hoping that I'm doing it 100% all the time. I'm hoping to be getting commissions that I'm just overwhelmed with them. That's what I'm hoping for. Although I do want to get into prints of sports figures. So what I will do is I will go down to games that are local and see if I can get some photos, and obviously copyright situations, and speak to the right people. And I'm hoping for that. But for now, the commissions, I'm hoping like in 5 or 10 years, I'm doing mostly commissions. So I see a lot of artists that are doing that I look at, and they kind of look at them as, wow, I want to be there. And so I'm hoping for that. They're doing some pretty big commissions.
That's cool. And the size of your work, are they small images, medium images, large images?
Most of them are like medium images. Mostly, I mostly work from 16 by 20 to and up. The biggest I've ever done was a commission that was 6 feet by 7 feet.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah, that was which I really love, but it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of it's got to be something special. So until my mind gets to that point where this is it, I will be doing a lot more bigger things, because that's what I really, really want to do. Really I like bigger things other than portraits. But I like bigger
big portraits.
I like big paintings.
That's cool. If when looking at your work, what do you think one of your greatest attributes is within your work? Like one of the things that you're excelling at?
I think color. I think I also think lighting. I think I'm getting better at lighting and color. I'm pretty good, although like I I'm self-taught. So when I started painting, like I didn't know why or what I was doing. So it was all just I would try something and it wouldn't work. I'd try something else, and most of the time I'd hit it pretty good, because, like I said, I got a pretty good eye, so I can manipulate. I can get the colors I want, even though I didn't understand it. But seeing it, I could capture it. So I think that is probably what I'm getting a little better at.
Oh, that's nice. And then over the next couple of years, if there was one area of your work that you could really focus on and improving, what would that be?
Oh,
Because as artists, we're
probably.
always seeking to do better and be better. So, um,
Right, exactly. You know, one of my thoughts I've always had that holds me back in a lot of things is my crazy perfectionist mind that that I have. Um, when the kids were younger and they would be washing their cars, I'd go out and say, "Hey, let me give you a hand," and they'd say, "No, no, 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 that's okay. Just let me pay." Because I would, "Hey, you missed that spot. Hey, that corner. Hey, hey, but if you're gonna do it right. Let's clean it for you know." So I'm the same way with that with paintings. Sometimes I want to be too perfect, but then again, when I'm doing portraits, obviously you want to be right on. So I think that's it right there.
That's awesome. Really, very cool. Very cool. As you're going through your art making process and you're doing the portraits, and um, if you could go back in time, or maybe reach out to another artist who was asking you for help, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would probably tell them paint every day, just paint. And all of us as artists, I think I'm correct when I say this, that we all have this fear of yikes. You get a brush in your hand and you're like, and I'm not, maybe I'm speaking out of turn when it comes to these really great, these guys that professionally, these guys are really terrific. But at least with me, and I found that I had this fear, not as much anymore, but this fear of, oh, I'm gonna fail. I'm not gonna do it right. I think that I thought of this thought the other day. I thought of this thought when you ask somebody, if you were to ask somebody, draw a person or draw a person, and they say, well, I can't do that. Or draw a mountain. I can't do that. Draw a tree. I can't do that. Or draw this. And my thought was, well, wait a minute. Yes, you can do it. I didn't say draw a perfect tree. I didn't say draw a huge tree. I just draw a tree. Draw a stick figure. That's a person. You know. So I think what I would tell an artist is draw, paint, just paint. This doesn't have to be the perfect painting. Just has to be your painting. And as time goes by, that you see that, oh, I want to get better at this, I want to get better at that, and you just keep working at it. And I think another thing I would say is technique is really there's I don't have a technique that you have to have every single perfect technique down to do the right painting. Just paint. Sometimes you find your own technique. Obviously there's techniques for doing things, and I'm learning that. But at the same time, I'm learning that a technique is whatever it is you're putting on your canvas at that time, and you build on that. So I think I would tell them, there's no fear in painting. There's no fear in it. And if you don't like it, that's okay. Continue, just paint, because that fear is just telling you that you need to be perfect at it. No one's asking you to be perfect. Your mind is telling you, I want to paint, then paint. We're listening to our own lies.
Indeed.
Hey,
Indeed.
you need to paint. You need to paint perfect.
That's right.
I think that's the best advice I can give somebody.
I would concur with that. One of the things at my academy that we train people in is this devaluing, let's say, that perfection mentality. And so one of the little mottos that we have is that we're not seeking to be perfect, just great. And because perfection is impossible, but being great, you can do consistently, repeatedly, over and over and over again. You can be great at something. And the perfection,
exactly.
And it's there's a system a personality system out there called an Enneagram. It's, I don't know, about 2,000 years old or whatever, made by the Greeks. And it's like these, I think it's 9 personality types. And one of them is what they call the romantic or the artist. And that person tends, they like to be isolated. They like to be let's say, I don't want to say the oddball, but like going against the grain, right?
Right. The outcast, somewhat.
The outcast, and they kind of revel in that, right? It's like, oh yeah, everybody did it this way, I did it that way. And when they're stressed, when they're under pressure, they'll begin to act like what they call a number 2, which is what they call the helper. And so a lot of times artists may give away free stuff, whatever, because when they get stressed, it's like they're trying to find approval in a sense. So they'll maybe just start helping people. A lot of times we think of helping and giving away our artwork or whatever. But one of the characteristics of them is that they have this need to be perfect, right? Which is another personality in the Enneagram. And so what's interesting to counteract that, a little dog barking, to counteract that, there's another personality, which is called the observer. And a lot of times that's where the artist actually finds their power, when they're able to figure out a system, a way of doing things.
Right.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We're just going to have to go with it. When they're trying to figure out a system that allows them to get close to their perfection, right? And so that's one of the tricks, is by focusing on being great rather than perfect. But if they can find a repeatable way of doing it, and they can rely on that, then they shine, right? And I think that's why people are looking for their style. They're looking for their approach, their method that they can, consistently produce at a high standard. And yeah, but if you're seeking to be perfect, you're going to rob yourself of that, because you might not.
No, like right. You'll never get there.
You'll never get there, because you may not even start. Yeah. Right, because you're getting stressed about it to begin with.
Right.
Yeah. So.
See. Yeah, that used to, like I said, it would drive me crazy. And especially when I was doing the landscapes, I'm like, it doesn't have to be, this is a landscape. This is outdoors. This is nature. This is movement and blah, and different colors and shapes and things, find the movement in there, let it go. Yep. And because when I was little, when I was coloring books, I would stay in the line. But I'm learning, when it comes to just go. Don't just, it's that fear that I just got, I'm not listening to you. I'm just doing it, whether anybody likes it or not. but in the portraits is a different thing, obviously. You better get that nose right, or it ain't gonna fly. But that's something different. But in painting, I just go, just do it. Just do it. I did a painting one time. It's in my portfolio there too. That it's a mountain scene that I did in about a half hour. And I got so many people that loved that. And it was just like, boy, just slap that tree in there, just move that, just flow. And I love it. And it's got a little waterfall going down. And it just, it's kind of not abstract, but impressionistic. And I love it. And that pretty much I think that's when I got changed to the point where I was like, just go. Just go. So
that's cool. It's interesting, because with the perfection, you may try and get so tight, and you think that people want to see this perfect thing. And a lot of times people are okay with it not being perfect, because what they're really seeing is the courage that it took get past that fear, I mean, and so, I mean, and your marks, your paint strokes, the marks that you make with your pencil, that captures that energy. So if you're afraid of something and yet you're still willing to stand up and walk through that fire, there's this great saying that everything you want is on the other side of fear. And so the fact that you're willing to walk through that, people feel that in your work.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. I like that. Right. Yeah. Wow. I like that.
Cool.
I am the I'm losing my thought here. But if I was to go back and set up every painting I've done, excuse me, you can see that my fear was leaving me.
That's awesome.
Because every single painting that I did from the very beginning just had to be in the line. And now as you go, you can see my paintings and you can see it just going, whoa, it blossomed. Even though I thought the beginning was the way, I thought that was the way. Now I'm just, I think that isn't the way, because people do paint that way. But in me, inside of me, it came out.
Yep.
And that's the good feeling. That's the part in you I always take painting, and it's so spiritual. Like it's such a spiritual thing to me. It's just like, it's really weird, but it's I can analyze it in such a spiritual way that it actually gives you goosebumps, so. But I understand what you're saying.
That's not weird. That's, I think, where most artists are. At least they feel that, or they go in and out of that. And it's funny, at the Academy we often say that we're training the modern shamans, because your shamans were your doctors and your priests, and basically your craftsman, artist person in the community. And a lot of times, the hunters would go out and bring food, or the gatherers would bring food, but they would exchange it with the shaman, or the local crafts art person, in exchange for little fertility gods or whatever it was, little statues or whatnot.
Right.
And
right.
It's interesting. Back in the olden days, there was these guilds, and but they never, from my understanding, had a painters guild. You couldn't find a guild where it was just a bunch of painters hanging out, because the painters were found in the medical guild. Because at one time, to be a painter, you had to know anatomy, you had to know chemistry, you had to know botany, you had to know geography. Yeah, it was all this science that you had to know, and it was very similar to what the doctors had to know. So it's
right.
Cool.
Wow.
It's cool.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So do you want to share a moment, like when you're talking about that it's a spiritual thing for you? How would you expound on that?
I think first of all, I do want to say that I think when I mention it's weird, I think what it actually turns out to be is weird because I've never known that. I mean, spirituality, yes, I've known it all my life, but the weird part was I never knew it in painting. I never knew it in, does it do that? And it does. And I think what it is that it's something. I'm a very spiritual person, and everything is everything. I truly believe that that what I do and what I have is, it's a God-given gift, and not that I'm perfect at it or great at it. It's just however much I enjoy it and love it, that's just a gift for me. But I take it but when I'm painting, it's almost as if I'm in it. I'm in it. It's hard to explain.
Well, it makes
everything
total sense.
Around me is, everything around. It's almost as if my whole being is put on display. It's really neat, I think.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's not just a thing. It's not just a painting. It's something special. So, as a stick figure can be, it'd still be something special. And it's almost like a child. When you praise him when he does something, like my grandson, he's 3 years old and he loves to paint with me. And boy, he says, Pop, you see that? That's a whale or whatever, and it's just a glob, And I'm, wow, that's so cool. And he's like, you like it? Yeah, I like it. I love it. Oh my, and you can see him well up in this thing about him that, wow, that's me. Wow. That kind of spiritual thing still happening in me.
That's beautiful, man. That's incredible. There's always, tomorrow is Easter. So, there's this little thing which Jesus said about having the faith of a child, and and you're
exactly
in that story you're saying with you and your grandson, it's very, very much like that. It's like to live in faith. You may do it right, you may not do it, but that's irrelevant. You did it in faith, and
exactly right.
Yeah, and that's
exactly.
In that spiritual connection, you feel that joy or that approval in a sense. Like it doesn't even matter if you did it wrong or right. It's just the fact that you did it with a sincere heart, a pure heart, an enthusiasm. Right?
Exactly right. Yeah, I wasn't copying anybody. I wasn't trying to be somebody else. I wasn't trying to do this. I was just doing it, and Pop loves it.
That's
and he loves it.
That's it. That's awesome. That's awesome.
I think what happens. I think what happens with us is we're just so grown up.
Yep.
We're just all a bunch of grown ups, and I always say this like about a baseball little league or a little football team or whatever. I would always say this would be a great league if it wasn't for us grown ups.
That's beautiful.
Because we got ways of grouping everything up, and I think that's what we do. Sometimes painters, we're thinking too much as grown-ups are trying to be like that painter or this painter. Or they're not going to like it. Who cares? Just go.
That's awesome.
But
that's awesome, man. I love it. So, Jim, as you're working in your studio, you're producing this artwork. For you to, have this creation download through you and be produced, made by your hands, and then out into someone else's life, who are 3 people or businesses or services that help you in that journey, that help you manifest that reality?
You know what? I could mention places that I go in and buy my materials. I go to Michael's. I buy materials at Michael's. I go to Blix in Santa Monica, which is just like a Toys R Us for artists.
Is that Dick
one of the best places to go? Yeah, it's called Blix Art Supply.
Yeah, it used to be called
Santa Monica Boulevard.
It used to be called Dick Blix. For whatever reason, they dropped the first name. Because when I grew up, there was one. I never knew that. There was a huge Dick Blick warehouse right down the street, and
wow.
Well, not down the street; it's probably about 15-minute walk, but it was kind of like one road.
Sure.
And but and then they moved, but they're a huge art supply company.
Right. But and the people there are just so knowledgeable. I could sit there all day and listen to them. They tell me about different paints. I'm like, I never knew that. I know. Oh my goodness, the paint. You buy a new brush and you're like, oh my, it changes your life. A new type of canvas, it changes your life. I mean, as an artist, I think I'm learning. I'm growing into. Hey, you know what? It's got to be some really good stuff to get some what you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
But I think mostly for me, I think it's mostly other artists that have just inspired me that I've met just through Facebook, and I look at them as there's an artist, and I don't mind I mention their name, but her name is Chris Saper.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if you've heard of her, but she's a portrait artist. And I remember when I first started painting, the very first time, the first painting I did, I went into a art store and I opened a book and I saw this portrait, and I thought, I want to paint like that. It's pretty kind of impressionistic, and it was out of the lines and it was beautiful. And I said, so I started following, not, I started seeing her paintings and listening to her. I actually gave her a call one day just to talk to her and get some advice from her and whatever. But mostly people like that have not mentored me in any way, just that I just admired the way that they go about what they do. I think mostly artists. Dee Beardine is another one that I've really enjoyed, following. Just the landscapes that they do. It's just easy. It's so clean, so real, and so. But I would say that.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's great. So, Jim, before we wrap up this call, I'm going to ask you how people can get in touch with you, and either for a commission or other artists who want to, just connect with you and support you and have some community. But before I ask you for your contact information, I have to ask you the most important question I ask all the artists, and that is, what do you like to eat?
I'm going to tell you, to be really truthful with you. Anything my wife cooks.
Oh, okay. She's standing around you?
Anything.
Yeah?
No. She knows it, though. Let's put it this way. When I first met her, the very first time she asked me, and we were just barely dating, she said, would you like something to eat? And I said, sure. And she was 19 or whatever. And she goes, well, I got some hot dogs here. And I said, that's great. I'll have a hot dog. She came out and brought me 2 hot dogs, and they were like exploded. And I said, what? And she went, I don't know what happened. She couldn't boil a hot dog if the light depended on her. But today, I'm Hispanic and she's Irish and German and everything else. And she learned from my mom, but she cooks Mexican food from scratch.
Wow.
And the best. Not no canned stuff. Everything from scratch. And oh my goodness, she's the best. So that's my answer.
In this part of the conversation, as I do many more podcasts, the audience might hear me say this several times. Probably one of the greatest things about my ex-wife was her ability to cook. And I actually remember she's from Guatemala, and her grandmother taught her to cook. Okay. So, so she got a little Latin food. And actually, I'm going to go pick up my kids here in a little bit. And she has all this family because they had a baby shower yesterday. And just for the non-Hispanics, In white culture,
Right.
when we have a baby shower, I say white culture and we because I was raised primarily in white culture in foster homes. So, a baby shower
Right.
is
Oh.
something that women do. In Latin culture, everyone is involved in a baby shower. And
Isn't that funny? You're
yeah,
right.
well, yeah, man. I mean, Hispanics, they any reason to party.
Right.
It's like you're gonna not make us party today.
Exactly.
I remember my daughter. She was probably about 5, and she was so upset when her birthday came around because she said to her mom, she was like, "I don't like my birthday." And they were like, "What?" She's like, "Because it's really not for us. It's for you guys to party." It's like, yeah, that's why we have so many kids. It's more parties every
That's
year.
right. Exactly. Isn't that funny?
But I remember
true.
when we were first dating, and I was heading back off to an art school, and she was heading to a school, and I thought, well, we're going to be a couple hours away. Maybe we should probably maybe just break this thing off and see what happens in the future. And so I went over to her apartment to have that conversation, and
right.
I walked in and she was cooking this chicken. She's like, "Oh, why don't you sit down and eat?" And I'm like, "Okay." But it was the first time I ever had her food because we always went out to eat and that kind of stuff. And I just remember saying to myself, "Oh my God, this is the best chicken I've ever had. I would be a fool to leave this woman go, right?" So, so I stayed. But yeah, it was. Now on the flip side,
that's funny.
I won't go there. But yeah, she and I'll tell you, man, it's like when we separated. It's been about maybe 5-6 years now. The food is just. I haven't. I remember a couple years ago, I dropped the kids off and her new husband, and they invited me in. Hey, you want to have some dinner? I said, yeah, sure. And I took that. I almost wept. I was like, oh my God. And like, this is what this was like. So, yeah, Hispanic food cooked cooked right is incredible. So I feel you, man. I feel you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now let me ask you this weird question on this: the fact that your wife learned from your mother, right? She learned from your mother.
Yes.
Did you say? Yeah. Did that help bond them together? Because normally you think there's a tension between wives and mother-in-laws, but
yeah, no, you know what? It's funny because you say that because I've seen it. I've seen that happen in other marriages and mother-in-laws, and I can see. But that helped. That really helped. I think because my wife was always right. She was in there in the kitchen watching, because when the kids were younger, my wife was working at that time, and she would drop off the kids at my mom's house, and she'd pick them up. So we'd have dinner there all the time, almost every night. And when they were littler, and my wife was always there to watch and to learn and to see what she was doing. And then she would call my mom up and ask, hey, what do I do with the rice? How do I do? What do I do? Blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, I think so. I think that definitely bonded them together.
That's
helped.
Awesome. And you said your wife is Irish?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So
she's Irish German.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You said she was originally from Pennsylvania. That makes total sense now.
Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, we got the Pennsylvania Dutch, and so here's a crazy question for you. We just passed St. Patty's Day, which many people who like that holiday, even if they're not Irish, because they get to drink a lot of alcohol. But on that day, being that you're Mexican and she's has that Irish descent, do you guys decorate with leprechauns or leprechauns?
Leprechauns.
Leprechauns. No leprechauns,
corned beef and cabbage.
Oh, okay. There it is. In some 7/8.
We had corned beef and cabbage on that day. And on Cinco de Mayo, it's all enchiladas, rice, and beans.
That's awesome. Very, very nice. Very nice. Jim, if people want to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
I lost you there for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. If people want to get in contact with you, how can they get in touch with you?
Mm-hmm. Well, my website is going to be built soon. I had another one, but it was kind of the way I did it, and it just wasn't too professional. So I have another one made. But right now they can email me at jimmypopart at Hotmail. That's jimmypopart at Hotmail. Or they can just direct message me through Instagram, Jimmy Pop Art, or catch me on Facebook as Jimmy Pop Art.
Hi, I'm Julie Kane, a fine artist living in Brisbane, Australia. I have just been through the Core 80 experience, and wow, what an amazing course. I have learned so much about how to read and translate the story behind fine art. It's unbelievable. It's been an absolute eye-opener, and I am so glad I took the course. I think it will help me in the long term to improve my skills, make better art, and take my art to the highest level. I've loved every minute. I highly recommend this course to anyone, artist or non-artist, who wants to both appreciate and read art better, but also to produce their own art to the highest compositional standard. It really, really is a huge eye-opener into the art world. And it's a fabulous course, so if you have the chance, please do the course. You won't regret it.
In just 30 days, the Core 80 experience teaches you to decode the intentional design underneath great masterpieces. Through video lessons, assignments, and feedback, you learn to recognize the underlining structures like thrust maps, echoes, and gamuts that give master compositions substance and gravitas. Knowing how master artists and illustrators compose their artwork unlocks your ability to give your artwork more meaning and energy. Enroll today and get a 7-day no-hassle money-back guarantee at core80.com.